Hi, this is David Boje, and we're in the 5th series on sense in the books on Through the Looking Glass and Sylvie and Bruno. So we'll be looking at a number of storytelling examples, in particular the interpretations of Gilles Deleuze in his book, The Logic of Sense. So stay with us. We got a number of really cool stories to share with you, and off we go in Through the Looking Glass. So as we go through the looking glass, Alice asks the question, what's on the other side of the looking glass? If I step through it, what am I going to see? And when I look back at this world, what am I going to see there? So that's what we're doing. When we map it out in the things I've developed in my particular websites, you can go and see the summaries and the books and articles. Antenarrative.com has about 100 articles on the sphere of sense that happens in advance to the action because it comes from the before of histories, and we're looking back from the future to the now, and we're making changes. Those changes can be full of tentativeness, about courage to experiment, so the old version of experimenting and trial and error in advance, that the meaning of tentativeness once had. And I work with my friend Duncan Paley on that. This relates to enthinkment.com. The word enthinkment is rethinking with unasked questions. Asking questions is about the state of affairs that are manifesting. So it's layers of cause and effect that we're sorting out. So it's not just making sense of things in the Carl Weick sort of orientation. And finally, there's the Q shamanism. And you can put these arrows any which way you want, depending on the context. But in Q shamanism, we combine quantum physics with shamanism. Fred Alan Wolf is a good text if you want to look at that, and look at the website for more texts. Well, we're making denotations, we're indexicals, we're pointing to this and that. In the other world that I call the mythical world, and we're looking back on this world as the dogs are barking because they know I'm making a video, and they're wonderful dogs and we love them. So there's the game of keeping a conversation going that occurs in Sylvie and Bruno. There's a thing with the Duchess and the Maid, and you see here Alice dancing. There's a book I wrote with Grace Ann Rosille on how to keep a conversation going using the gift of storytelling, not just extracting things from an interview, but actually sharing your story as you hear another person's story. So let's get right into it. The Duchess says, "You're thinking of something, my dear, and that makes you forget to talk. I can't tell you just what the moral of that is, but I shall remember in a bit." But as soon as Alice does speak, the Duchess is busy finding morals. And this is an important part of the whole thing of the interaction of the Duchess and Alice as they have a conversation. And think about your own conversations. As somebody says something, you're thinking of what you're going to say. And in this series of sense, the Duchess keeps extracting a moral of the story. But I shall remember in a bit. But as soon as Alice does speak, the Duchess is busy finding morals. So she's not really listening to Alice when that happens. And how often is that true for all of us? Here's a summary of the game. The game of keeping up a conversation, the moral of each proposition, which we looked at in a previous episode, is having 4 things: a denotation of indexicals, this, that, it, before, after, past, present, future, that sort of thing, the name of something. And its manifestation, the cause and effect relationships, and you can have layers of them. I'm learning from my friend Adam Cowart. And you have a signification of it, which means the significance is in a concept that's more general or even a universal if you're a Kantian. then you look at the sense that's happening. And this is not just the restricted sense of the five senses. It's really important to understand that. So let's say in this series, there's a couplet, a denotation, and then a moral happening. This is the way conversations of storytelling can happen, and a quantum leap of sense is taking place into an extra being, a non-being, not just the bodies of the five senses, but it's something of an ethical, moral proposition is happening while people are not listening to one another. So talking of axes, said the Duchess, chop off her head. So you get the idea right here. This Duchess is not someone to mess around with. The Duchess glanced rather anxiously at the cook to see if she meant to take the hint, but the cook was busily stirring the soup and seemed not to be listening. So she went on again, 24 hours, I think, or is it 12? Oh, don't bother me, said the Duchess. I never could abide figures. And with that, she began nursing the child again, singing a sort of lullaby to it as she did, and giving it a violent shake at the end of every line. And the Duchess is not a really nice person, let's admit it. Speak roughly to the little boy and beat him when he sneezes. He soon does it to annoy. He only does it to annoy because he knows it teases. So this Duchess is a child abuser, in which the cook and the baby joined in. Wow, wow, wow. While the Duchess sang a second verse of the song, she kept tossing the baby violently up and down, and the poor little thing howled so, and Alice could hardly hear the words. I speak severely to my boy. I beat him when he sneezes, for he can thoroughly enjoy the pepper when he pleases. And there's a lot of pepper in the air from the cooking. And this is, the Duchess thinks she's raising the child well and conditioning him to be able to be around pepper without sneezing. And how often is a very potentially evil person thinking that they're a good person? Wow, 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 here you may nurse it a bit if you like, the Duchess said to Alice, flinging the baby at her as she spoke. I must go and get ready to play croquet with the Queen. She hurried out of the room, which sort of gives you a sense of the priorities of the Duchess in childcare. The cook threw a frying pan after her as she went out, but it just missed the Duchess. Alice caught the baby with some difficulty, as it was a queer-shaped little creature, and held it in her arms, legs in all directions, just like a starfish, thought Alice. The poor little thing was snorting like a steam engine, and here we see there's a transformation of the baby into a little piglet. Now, in Sylvie and Bruno, we have another story, The Red Jewel. The narrator visits the Lady Muriel and the father, Earl, in the company of Arthur. They discuss weightlessness, but let's look in. Later, Arthur and the narrator visit the beach, and Arthur goes home. Now, if you look at the jewel here, it says Sylvie, all will love Sylvie, and Sylvie will love all. This is the part that Gilles Deleuze focuses on, but let's give it a little context. Sylvie and Bruno go in search of the beggar, unbeknownst to them, who's their father. She rubs the red amulet, the red jewels in some translations, and a mouse is transformed into a lion in which they ride. Their father listens, they don't know it's the father, giving an account of the ambassador's visit. He cannot rectify the situations, but casts a spell. So here you see the transformation of the mouse into the lion as Sylvie and Bruno chase after it. And here you see the beggar, who's really the father, if you follow the storyline. Only a crust of bread, Your Highness, he pleaded. He was a fine old man, but looked sadly ill and worn. A crust of bread is what I crave, he repeated. A single crust and a little water. Here's some water, drink this. Ugh, bellowed, emptying the jug over his head. They're not treating the beggar with kindness. Well done, my boy, cried the vice warden. That's the way to settle such folk. These are not people that are kind to the homeless. Clever boy, the warden chimed in. Hasn't he good spirits? But then there's a transformation, and Sylvie and Bruno, the brother and the sister, run into the arms of the father, who's the king. Now let's look at a third kind of series about sense, and refer back to the model I gave you. The Gardener's Song has a number of stanzas, and I've picked out a few, and I encourage you to go to the book and see them all. He thought he saw a buffalo. That was the proposition. Upon the chimney piece he looked again, and found it was his sister's husband's niece. Unless you leave this house, he said, I'll send for the police. He thought he saw a rattlesnake. I'll let you imagine a rattlesnake. That questioned him in Greek. He looked again and found it was the middle of next week. And one thing I regret, he said, it cannot speak. He thought he saw a banker's clerk descending from the bus. He looked again and found it was a hippopotamus. If this should stay to dine, he said, there won't be much for us. We don't want him to swallow anything, Sylvie explained. He's not hungry, but we want to see him, so will you please? And here we see a kangaroo. He thought he saw an elephant that practiced on a fife, this kind of a flute. He looked again and found it was a letter from his wife. At length I realized, he said, the bitterness of life. Let's look at something else that's occurring here in the writing by Lewis Carroll. Jabberwocky. You see this combination of different kinds of animals? It's kind of a dragon with wings with a long head neck. And maybe it's a combination of some other kinds of animals. And this is a nonsense poem, so don't expect it to make sense in every line. 'Twas brilling and lithely toves, did gyre and gimble, 'tis the wabe, all mimsy were the borogoves, at the mome ras oatgrob, beware the jackawob, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that clutch, beware the Jacob bird, and shun the famous bandersnatch. He took the famous sword in hand. There's a fight going on here. Long time muxum, so he sought. So he rested at the tumtum tree and stood a while in thought. And he thought he stood. Oh, the jackal walk with eyes of flame came whiffing through the tungly wood and bumbled as he came. 1, 2, 3, 2, and through and through. And the blade with sticker snack. He left the dead with the head. He was glumping back. Galumphing is a word my friend Carl Weiss uses to talk about sense-making, by the way. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beameth boy. O Rabjo's day, Kaloth, Calais, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brill and slithy, did gyre and gimble in the wabe. Oh, mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome ras outgrabe. So I tell you this song because the Jabberwock, this creature, the combination of animals, I saw a hybrid animal in my sleep, a black eagle and a black jaguar in my dream. And I want to share a story or two. The QShamanism.com is where we meet and we do the drumming, and the Q stands for quantum, the quantum and the shamanic, quantum physics and the shamanic. So the hybrid animals, we don't see them in real life. We don't see them in the Matrix because we've taken the blue pill, but we do see them in other settings when we go into the mythical realm. Here's another example of this porcupine crashing through the Matrix and about to do very destructive things to the humans therein. And here's a rather scary image of Alice about to be eaten by some sort of animal that's a combination of a cat and a bear or some other combination hybrids. Here's another hybrid creature that we see, a sea creature with a strange head approaching Parliament and entering politics, reading something about the trespass libel. But this is an image I have had, the jaguar, and it's meeting up with the eagle. And I'll show you an image here of the eagle, the jaguar, the eagle, the jaguar. And this was given to me by someone studying Mexican shamanism. And I originally had the two animals separated, but in my dream they came together. So this was a little bit about Q shamanism, enthinkment, tentativeness, antenarrative, true storytelling. These are the things I'm integrating in my dreams as I read through Lewis Carroll's works about Alice in Wonderland, Sylvia and Bruno, Through the Looking Glass, and other texts. So I do hope you are enjoying it, and we'll see you again when we go through another series about Gilles Deleuze. Thank you.